Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of America.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero. Today, Reed Coverdale joins me once again on the show. Reed and I have become good friends. We text a lot, we chat a lot, and it was nice having him on. We had like a really nice, relaxed conversation. We kind of cover a lot of different things going on, especially in like the liberty field and post-libertarianism, and what we see in the world around us, and just the way that we're conceptualizing and thinking about these things. So I think it's a worthwhile conversation, and it was a lot of fun to sit and chat with Reed. So y'all should enjoy this one. But first, as always, RyanBunting.com. For all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a great libertarian and a great anarcho-capitalist. He's also a great graphic designer. He designed my podcast logo and Pete Quinones' podcast logo for Free Man Beyond the Wall. Also, he has a book on sale at his website, RyanBunting.com, so it's worthwhile to go over there and check out his book, Project Manicore. Also, give him some business. Dude could use it. He's a broke motherfucker. As usual, thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. It's a pleasure, and I get asked more about the music than I do about the podcast, so that's always nice that I have something that people want to know about. And if you're not already going there on a regular basis, go to libertarianinstitute.org. We have a lot of great podcasts up there. Patrick McFarland, Pete Quinones, Scott Horton, Keith Knight, etc., etc. I'm probably forgetting some, but that's okay. I'm not looking at the website at this moment, but there's a lot of great writers and podcasters that are publishing at the Libertarian Institute. So go to the libertarianinstitute.org and keep us rolling, man. We're putting in the work, man. So don't be afraid to go to libertarianinstitute.org and keep up with everybody. All right, enjoy the show. All right, I'm here with Mr. Reed Coverdale. What's going on, man?
Oh, just trucking for America. You know how it goes.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. Do you know if there was anything about truck driving in that infrastructure bill? Because they put all kinds of weird shit in there.
I don't know, but this might not be popular, but I actually looked at the bill, and obviously I'm against it, but it's not nearly as bad as the ones that went through last year, was my thought reading it. Like, I mean, at least it's actually going toward shit in this country, not, gender studies in Pakistan and 1.3 billion for Sudan and all that crap. But yeah, who knows? There's probably something in there about tying your alligator to a fire hydrant or some shit. Who knows?
Well, I know they put in there that in 3 years, all vehicles being sold will have breathalyzers in them. So that's,
yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah,
I was like, oh, there you go. I guess I'm not going to the grocery store anymore.
Yeah, man, I sometimes wish I were born like 40 years earlier than I was, just because I don't know. Like, I mean, and I'm not even that devious of a person, but I just hate having people watch me all the time and, know what you're doing all the time. Like, I just like being left alone, and I'll get my job done and I'll do my thing and I'll be responsible. Just stop spying on me, and things are headed the other way. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's no doubt. And they also put in there that what was it, the universal child care. So now taxes are paying for daycares for irresponsible single moms. So that's
Yeah.
always a plus.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. that's the direction we're headed, it seems. So.
I just don't know what half this shit has to do with infrastructure. That's like, I'm just like, okay, like, It's everything's infrastructure nowadays. It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll just say, ending the war in Iraq is infrastructure, or eliminating all gun laws is infrastructure. You just got to play their own game and turn everything into infrastructure, and then you're good. And then everything you don't like is the patriarchy or racism or something. So, taxes are the patriarchy, or the ATF is white supremacy, which that one's not that far off from the truth. So, like that's
Yeah, you win some, you lose some. Yeah, and broken clock's right twice a day. So.
That's right.
But yeah, no. So it's just weird. It's really just. I was talking to my mom about this. It's like an extremely strange time to be alive. It's just looking around, and I'm just like, man, what the hell? Like, it's just like we're living in a dystopian novel, and plenty of people have said this, but like you couldn't have written this and got it published. Nobody would have, like, they would have been like, this is too far gone. This is too unbelievable. Like, there's no one's gonna buy this.
Yeah, I mean, I think a stupid population is very conducive to ending up in a society that we have right now. And we've had a stupid population, at least as long as I've been around. I never, I don't know about you, but certainly driving down the roads and working with different people and meeting different people everywhere, I've not come away with the impression that, wow, people are well informed and intelligent. That has not been my takeaway. So I can't really say I'm too surprised that we are where we are. I mean, it seemed inevitable. I remember thinking a few years ago, like, holy shit, how does everything still run? And, because I was seeing the new guys coming onto the job site, and I was just like, man, imagine when these people are in charge. Then I started thinking, like, things have been like this for a while, and think of who is already in charge, and that can't hold together too long. And voila, I think we're seeing it fall apart at the seams right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's just, it's almost, if it weren't so comical, I might be scared, but I I spend most of my time laughing, going, are you fucking serious?
Yeah, dude, it's especially like having Biden as president. Like, I think that shit is funny. Like, people are all, oh, he's so embarrassing and this is such a disgrace. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like, I felt the same way with Trump. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
was
mean,
gonna
if
say it's almost as good as Trump.
yeah, like, I remember at first, like, I was still kind of blue pilled, but then after a couple of years, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Who cares? Like, he's who we deserve. And I mean, he's like the most American president we've ever had. That's what I thought of Trump. And that's not a compliment, by the way. That's just like, he's the most transparently American president we've ever had. And then, Biden, I kind of feel the same way. Like, he's a good representation of us.
Yeah.
And, people don't like to hear that, but it's true. Like, arrogant asshole like Trump, and then a stupid nitwit like Biden. It's like, yeah, that's a pretty good representation of a sizable chunk of the population right there. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, like, I'm I've never like come across, before I started podcasting, I wasn't, there were very few people I ever met that I found were impressive in any way. So, but getting into this world and meeting so many people in this world, obviously my perspective's changed on how impressive people can be. But I think if I would have known that, I wouldn't have started my podcast. I would have been like, oh, well, I'm not impressive enough to start a podcast.
yeah, I remember when I first started thinking about podcasting, I thought, I don't know enough about this. But then, looking in the lower tier, because when you start out, you're not thinking like, oh, I'll be shoulder to shoulder with Scott Horton and Dave Smith and, all these Ryan Dawson, like all these people who are big time. Like, you're starting out at the bottom, And I was looking around at who was on the bottom, and I was like, oh shit, no, I know plenty to start a podcast, I guess, because I started listening to some of these people. But kind of agreeing with what you said there and a bit ago that you think you never meet anyone impressive in real life until you start doing this. Like I've totally come to see that. I mean, I don't know about you, but in any given room that when you're not at like a libertarian event or something or whatever, like I'm probably in the top 1% of knowledge when it comes to politics, and then probably in the top 5% when it just comes to knowledge in general. And that's kind of scary because I'm, in my 20s. But then yeah, you start doing this, and then after you've been doing it a while and you start actually talking to people like Scott Horton, then you realize like, wow, I don't know anything. That was kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. Well, it was always funny because my wife used to, we would be sitting around and I would be talking about the things I was thinking about, or she would be listening to me. She doesn't listen to me podcast anymore, but in the beginning she would listen to me podcast, and I would, she would, oh God, you're like the smartest person I've ever met in my life. And then I brought her to Childerberg, and she met Ace and a bunch of really, really smart people, Bird, and so at least I have that burden taken off my shoulders. I'm no longer the smartest person she knows.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I sent my dad a video I did with Peter Schiff, and I was like, oh, Dad, you'll love this video. We're talking about like all sorts of important stuff, and it's pretty basic too. Like I think your average person can understand it. And he watched it, and my dad's, he's a teacher, so, and he's actually a good teacher. He's like an old school guy who actually makes you just want to think. And he watched it and he was like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. And I was like, oh, whoops.
Damn. Hate it when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know my mom listens to my podcasts, and sometimes she's like, I don't understand where y'all are going with all this. But then it pays off, because like the other day she texted me and she goes, I don't know how all of you podcasters saw all of this crazy shit coming from like for the last 2 years. And now suddenly all this shit's happening. I don't know how y'all saw it coming. It's like we've just been studying history and looking at what's going on around us and going, well, this kind of smells like this, and this kind of looks kind of like this. Hey, I see some similarities here. Like what is the pattern that we're dealing with here, And she was like, well, I appreciate it, because I wouldn't have been prepared if it wasn't for y'all. And I was like, yeah, well, yeah, we were all preparing ourselves. We're not just talking, we're all doing things in our own lives to get prepared. I think that's kind of,
I mean, I was,
go ahead, bud.
okay. I was kind of lucky because I started doing this last May, and I was talking about, hey, inflation's going to come with all this new spending, and it's going to get out of control, and it's going to fuck over the poor the most. And these bills that they're passing are not going to help the middle class or the poor. They're going to the rich, and it's going to cause the most wealth inequality we've ever seen, and shutting all these businesses. It was pretty easy to call all the stuff because it was so obvious. And now I'm being vindicated because it's all happening. But it makes me feel sorry for like Peter Schiff, who's been doing this for like 15 years or whatever. And, things weren't as black and white back then. So he's trying to guess like, oh, we're going to have a recession. And he's been really right about a few things. But, when you're in more stable times, or like Ron Paul talking about how the monetary system is going to start falling apart or whatever, like 20 years ago, it just takes a lot longer for everything to pay off. But I just jumped into it at the right time, that it was like, hey, this is coming. And then like within a year, it's already happening. And, I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, what was it I think it was in April or May of 2020, I did a podcast with Mike Meharry, and we're like, okay, we really need to like get people to understand how the Federal Reserve works. So we did a podcast called Federal Reserve 101. Like, it was just like, this is like the ultimate time you really need to understand what's going on here. And so, and yeah, I mean, like it's we've all been like extremely vindicated as things, especially over the last year, have started happening. I mean, and here just recently, inflation has gotten way out of hand. I went to a Petro the other day, right? So they have the chicken salad sandwich with the was it cranberries and almonds in it. And you used to get that thing, I don't know what, $2.50, $3. You buy one of those, buy a bag of Cheetos, get you a little slice of cheesecake and a Coke. You walk out of there, spent $10, and you got a decent lunch and like whatever, and you can roll down the road and eat all this. Man, I went in there the other day. I was like, I just want something easy. I think I'm gonna grab the old school, chicken salad sandwich and Cheetos and cheesecake. It cost me almost $17, dude. I was
Yeah.
like, holy shit, dude. Like in this, we're talking just a few months. I was over the road
Yeah.
just a few months ago, right? I was eating this shit regularly just a few months. It's gone up over $6 in the last 4 months since June, July. I'm like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. With the tire shortage you and I have talked about, and the driving down the wages, the stagnant wages, and the Uber regulations, and then inflation on top of it. I really think that this truck driver shortage that they've been ghosting for the last like 2 decades is about to come true. Like people are just going to be like, I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. I can't afford to do it. You know?
Yeah. No, it's crazy. I mean, it's funny because you hear like Bernie Sanders always complaining about the top 1% of the 1%, or the top 10% of the 1% or whatever, getting, more than the bottom 99% or whatever. And it's like, dude, yeah, but that's because of the bills that you voted for and the policies you've been supporting. Like, and you can run your mouth all day about how upset you are that there's wealth inequality, but then when you vote for a 3.4 or $2.4 trillion bill where 80% of it goes to corporations and the military and toward the Federal Reserve to jack up to even higher amounts and then print off. And I mean, what people don't realize is when you print off all this money, the rich can buy assets that appreciate with inflation, and the poor can't do that. Their savings get flushed down the toilet. So every time we do quantitative easing of any sort, it screws over everyone in the middle and on the bottom. And we have done that like crazy this last year. And then at the same time, we kill, all the small businesses by shutting them down and not letting them operate. So, I mean, there weren't immediate economic effects from that. There were some, but not all of it, not the fullness of them. And so people were kind of like, oh, no, everything you're talking about is doomsday talk. Things are going to be fine. It's like, no, just give it a little while. And now we're at the point where enough time has passed that inflation's kicking in, and, people who haven't been working for a long time are starting to affect the supply chain. And, you see McDonald's offering $25 an hour and they can't get help. I mean, things are fucked, dude. It's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
crazy. I stopped at a Jack in the Box the other day because I was like, I haven't had one of the Frisco's in a while, so I was like, I'll get me a little sourdough burger, like whatever. I haven't done that in quite a long time. So I pull into the Jack in the Box and obviously can't go through the drive-through. So I
Right.
go inside and it's like, oh yeah, no, we don't have enough employees, so the dining room's closed until further notice. It's like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Well, I guess I'm not eating Jack in the Box today. Like, oh, like, all right. So I went down to the Flying J where the Wendy's is. I was like, okay, like whatever, dude. Like, but it's odd. It's so weird, like seeing this. Like, there's a Burger King down the road from my house, and Burger King's 24/7, but this thing's rarely ever open. I mean, it
Yeah.
opens. They didn't close the store, the whole Burger King down. It's open. It's just I don't know when it's open. Every once in a while, I'll see like people there, and it's like, oh shit, the Burger King's open. Well, fuck, I already ate like 2 hours ago. I guess I'm not getting Burger King today. But I went to bring my dog there the other day to get him a sausage biscuit, and they were closed. I was like, wait, it's 6:30 in the morning. What the fuck are you closed for?
Yeah.
I ain't got nobody to work, man. And it's like, but you know, a lot of that, what these lower paying jobs were already being competed with by the government, because the government was giving out more money, you know, in their damn little packages to people because of COVID. They were giving out more money in unemployment and in their little stimulus packages than they were making, you know, working, you know, at a Burger King or a Wendy's or,
Yeah.
you know, a Jack in the Box. And then as soon as like they start easing up on the freaking unemployment and all that shit, suddenly inflation kicks in and is like, well, I can't afford to go back to work now, you know? And it's like, we tried to tell you this was happening. We tried to tell you this was
Yeah.
coming, you know, and it makes you wonder. And then they're doing this stupid shit with OSHA about like trying to mandate vaccines, which we've talked about. And it's like, is this really the best time to be doing shit like this? You know, like
It's so dumb, man.
it's like,
Like it's you already can't get someone to work for $25 an hour at a drive-through at Wendy's. So why don't you also force them to be vaccinated or fire them? Like, oh, that's genius. Like, what a great
well, it's
idea.
not
That's
even
really,
forcing. It's not even forcing them to be vaccinated. It's forcing them to buy the vaccine, to pay for the vaccine, or pay for testing, because they've lifted a lot of the programs that cover these things and give them out for free. So now they're expecting the employees to pay for their own testing or their own vaccines, right? And so, well, they can't afford gas. What makes you think they're going to pay for a fucking vaccine? You know, it's like,
it's so funny that the left in general is pushing this too. You know, they're pro-worker apparently until, you know, I don't know, the last year and a half, the left has been so pro-corporate, it's not even funny. Like, I mean, if you can't see yourselves as anything other than stooges for corporations, you need to take the blinders off at this point, because you've done nothing but fuck over the working class guy. And you've just, you know, you just keep applying more and more pressure and making him say like, fuck you, fine, I'm done. Like, fuck, I'm just gonna go shoot myself. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy, man.
yeah. But you okay? So like, I want to move into this subject because you released a video. I don't know if it was last night. Guess it was last night. Um, about vaccines and about going home for the holidays. You had a specific instance happen with people not wanting to spend time with you because you hadn't been vaccinated. And I had told you, I said, man, I thought like when Trump was out of office, like the division in families couldn't get any worse. Like Trump was like the worst thing to happen to families over the holidays.
Yeah.
But now you have this whole vaccine issue, and those people that believe in the vaccine, and those people that are just like, I don't know, I don't know if I necessarily buy all the hype. I don't know if I necessarily buy what you're telling me. You know, I sent you that video earlier of Bill Gates saying we need to develop a new vaccine because this one's obviously not working properly or whatever. And you know, if we would have said that, like, I don't depend on YouTube, so this video can be taken down. I don't care because I don't release the video anyway. But you know, like we get demonized for saying things like that. But Bill Gates, because he's funding all these things, he can be like, yeah, well, I guess, you know, that money's wasted. You know, let's try a new, you know, McAfee virus, you know, installation here.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not computer programs, number one. And number two, it's really sad that you have this situation where things like the vaccine or like, you know, the Trump presidency or whatever can get in the way of families being together over the holidays.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, what happened was one of my well, it was an aunt and uncle. And I wanted to go visit them because they were going to be, I'm going home to see my immediate family in New Hampshire for Thanksgiving. And my immediate family is great. Like they're not making any deal about any of this. Um, but yeah, my aunt and uncle are going to be nearby. So I texted them, said, hey, I'd love to swing in and see you. And I'm not very public about my vaccination status, except I've done a couple videos about it on my channel. But my extended family, they don't watch my channel. Like I don't go on Facebook saying like I'm unvaccinated and anyone who gets vaccinated is a sheep, or like I don't do that shit. I don't care. Like it's your own personal choice, and if you want to tell other people about it, fine. And if you really must know in order to hang out with me, I'll tell you, but I don't go around like boasting about it. It's not something I really actually give a shit about. But anyway, they knew I wasn't vaccinated because that's circulated throughout the entire family for some reason. Um, and my uncle replied and he said, we're not doing indoors with people who aren't double vaxxed. And then he went on this whole diatribe for no reason. This is all through text about, he was just making a bunch of claims of things that I have said, which are things I've never said before. Like he was saying that I thought that the vaccine was more dangerous than the disease, and that he kept saying like, I don't know who your favorite virologist you listen to is, but whoever he is, you need to have him listen to the facts instead. And he just gave like me this whole list of things that I was wrong about, and I had my head in the sand and I was being stubborn or whatever. And then I actually clapped back at him. And if he had just thrown the, hey man, we're just hanging out with people who are double vaccinated right now because we're being careful, I'd have just been like, okay, whatever, man, cool, happy Thanksgiving, and just let it go.
Right.
But he had to turn it into this huge political statement. So I fired back at him, and I didn't even I wasn't vindictive, and I wasn't even really opinionated. I just gave him the facts. I was like, look, dude, this is using CDC statistics. So this isn't an opinion of any sort. It's just using statistics. With my age, my health, and my height and weight and all that, I can calculate that I have less than a 1% chance of being hospitalized without getting this vaccine. And if I get the vaccine, it does lower my chance, but it lowers it to like 1/100%. So, all right. I mean, I have gone from 1% to 0.01%. Like that, maybe that is a 1/100th of the chance I have now of being hospitalized, but it's out of such a tiny percentage point to begin with that it's not something I'm losing sleep over. And then I said, if I can lower my chances of, being hospitalized to 1/100%, for my age group, being a young man, I think my percent chance of being able to contract myocarditis is like pretty similar to the possibility of getting hospitalized by COVID at that point. So if I get this vaccine, it gets me to a 1/100% chance of being hospitalized over COVID. But then it also basically puts me at the same likelihood of side effects of the vaccine, or like within that general area. So it's like, I don't really see a reason to do it. I mean, it's sort of a wash, and it's just not a risk I want to take. And if this vaccine were proven to give you immunity to COVID or make it so you can't contract it and give it to other people, all right, then you'd have more of an argument that you're doing it for others around you and you're protecting others. But they've proven that that's not how this vaccine works. The way this vaccine works is it spikes proteins in your system that fight off the symptoms. So it does nothing as far as contraction or transmission. It's just fighting symptoms. So
it's like taking
you're not
NyQuil.
protecting other people by getting this. Yeah, exactly. So like it's I mean, if you take NyQuil and you have a cold, you can still give a cold to people, and you can still catch a cold from someone if you're taking NyQuil. So, I mean, if you're someone who's at high risk, then I'd probably get the vaccine. If I were someone who was overweight, if I had asthma, if I were a lot older, then I think there's arguments for it. But for my age and my health, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm not putting other people at risk. And I'm not even really putting myself at risk. So I'm not going to do it. And I replied with all the statistics and everything. And he had no argument. So his reply was all like walking back his political jabs that he had made and like, oh, well, no, I wasn't talking about you. I just mean all these other idiots. And it was kind of funny. And it's just an example of if you actually stand your ground and you state the facts, like they don't really have anything to throw at you,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I find it like extremely sad and disappointing that something like that these arguments have gotten like that the politics has gotten so divisive in the country that it's dividing families. Like to me that's like one of the saddest things.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's weird because it's over really stupid shit for the most part. Like, I mean, this by comparison actually is not as ridiculous. Like, at least this is over a disease that people have died from. The stuff in the last several years that people have gotten divided over has been so dumb. And we've built up so much hatred and animosity toward each other. Like, over the last decade, you watch Sean Hannity, and then you watch Rachel Maddow, and you watch Fox News, MSNBC. You just watch back and forth. It's nothing but building hatred toward each other. And of course, that's eventually going to have its payday. And here we are, like things finally broke down to the point where all that festering, built up hate just broke through the dam. And now we're dealing with the fallout from it. So I think it was inevitable, and it has been for a while. It's just, you can't claim that half the country is evil forever and keep preaching that to opposite sides and then not expect things to get ridiculous eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think maybe I'll look at it a little differently than you do though, because I don't look at it as separate events. I look at them as all as one thing. I look at it as a buildup, and the whole COVID thing, as far as I can tell, is just an extension of being worked up over Trump or woke politics, or because it's all the same people. So it's just
Yeah.
a new fight for them to engage in, right? And so when you look at how revolutionaries work, right? When you're thinking about communists and communist revolutionaries, they're always looking at how to how to attract more revolutionaries in order to continue the revolution. And I think they have reached critical mass on their propaganda with COVID. It just seems that they're getting normies to spread their propaganda, because you can tell, like, normal people in your life, if you just look at them and you say, you do realize that 99.89% of people survive COVID, right? They're like, no. And it's like, wow. And I remember hearing a statistic that it was something like 40% of Democrats believed COVID killed like over 50% of people that contracted it, or something. Like, it was some fucking
Was this on Bill Maher? Is that where you saw that? Because Bill Maher was doing a segment about that.
It might have been. Man, I don't know. It was something I ran into. Who knows what?
Yeah.
I just pick up these facts. I don't even pay attention to who I'm listening to. I'm just listening. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let me look this up. So I start reading on it. It might have been Bill Maher. But yeah, it's like this is a really strange, like, what are you talking? What are you people talking about? Like, we're not even living in the same world. It's kind of like, what was that guy? The Dilbert guy. Scott Adams. was talking about how it's like we're both looking at the same movie, but we're seeing two different movies play. Like it's like we're watching the same things happening in our world that's happening in their world, but we're seeing two different movies, you know, and you can't communicate like that.
Yeah.
And then as we were talking about before, you know, language is getting so convoluted. It doesn't even mean anything half the time, you know, and so communication, you just end up talking past each other like 90% of the time anymore, it seems.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I remember when we pulled out of Afghanistan, I was talking to one of my coworkers and he was saying, "Oh, there's going to be another 9/11 now." And I was like, that was another one of those moments where you're just like, what? Like, how is that what you're getting out of this? And he's like, well, you know, now the Taliban is going to be strong again, so they're going to attack us again. And it's just like, oh my God, there's so much wrong with what you just said there. I can't even begin to, you know, have a real conversation with you. And it's like that with COVID. It's like that with foreign policy. It's like that with everything. But you're right. It is like the language dissolving that has caused this inability to communicate. Um, like what the fuck does trust the science mean? Like that's a contradictory statement. You know, the science is not a religion, or it's not supposed to be. Like
Well, no, it
science is
is.
supposed it's becoming one, yeah. But you know, like science, the whole idea of science is humility and the ability to be proven wrong. Like that's what you do in science, is you prove your predecessors wrong. That's how we've gotten to where we are, is by proving what people in the past thought was truth to be incorrect. Where that's not, you know, religion works the other way. Religion is, oh, people in the past said something and you'd better believe it no matter what you discover. And that's what they're turning science into. It's like, trust the science. You know, we have discovered that this is fact and this is what we're going to do going forward, and you have no you know, you can't question it. And this was sort of starting with, you know, climate change. You know, that was a narrative that you could not question anything about. Like if you were like, actually I think the world's going to end in 200 years, not 50 years, then everyone would be like, oh, you're a science denier. Or if you're like, okay, well, I think it is warming up, but, you know, I think there's more factors at hand here than just carbon emit. Nope, science denier. So like now they've done that with COVID. Like if you're like, hey, look, I think it's a dangerous disease, but you're like you said, the numbers are not anywhere near what people think they are. I mean, less than 1% of people die from this, and people think it's like 10% of the population is dying from it or something.
Yeah.
And it's it just comes from that, like, from science having a position of absolute authority, where that's not what science is at all. I mean, science is the opposite of that. Science, you know, it actually never really proves anything. It just disproves things. Like that's all science does, is it's like, oh, that wasn't it. Oh, that wasn't it. Okay, well, this last thing we have, we can't disprove. So we're going with that being the case for now. And if you can disprove it, we're going to have to reconsider this. You know, that's how it's always worked. But
Right.
people have adopted this new philosophy that science is ordained from on high and it cannot be questioned. And, you know, that's part of that language falling apart too. Like if science doesn't mean science anymore, and, you know, data doesn't mean anything. I mean, everything's just falling apart. There is no truth. So fuck it. Like it's whoever has the most political power at one moment, that seems to be absolute truth in everybody's minds now.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've always been at war with Eurasia. You know, so, but it's just, I just can't, I don't know. Like it, none of the, you said something there and it clicked something and then I lost it, but it's just these, when you're looking at science in such a a black and white way, as if it's going to expose the absolute truth for you, then like you're not doing science anymore. You're doing religion, right? Like
Right.
it's faith based now. It's not based on anything but faith, right?
Right.
And this is what I think it was Cyprian I heard say this, that and it might have been Adam, I don't know. That the mask is the talisman and the vaccine is the baptism. Well, I don't want to
Yeah.
be part of your religion. How about that? Like, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
and so now they want to kill anybody that isn't part of their religion. And by kill, I mean, completely shun you and ostracize you from society. You look at what's going on in Austria right now, and I was listening. I again can't remember who it was, but somebody was talking to an investigative reporter that went to Austria. I think it was on that Hill show, the Hill.
Uh-huh.
I think it was on there.
Yep.
And so he was talking about Austria and being in Austria, and he was saying that, yeah, it's like all upper class people that are all given in to the state and going along to get along, and all the lower class, lower middle class people are being discriminated against. And so like this is just, it's turning into a new class warfare, between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated.
Yeah. I mean, there's two interesting contradicting parallels that you've pointed out there. One is between the equality people. I mean, it is between like the equality people and the anti-religious people. So the pro-equality people have become the most apartheid over the last year and a half. Like they were the ones who were saying like, we believe in equal opportunity for everybody. There should be no discrimination, blah, 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 all this stuff. And now they're the ones pushing for the most discrimination and the most inequality and over the most arbitrary thing ever. It's, and then the anti-religious people have them the most religious. Like they've clung onto one narrative out of this entire time and they've stuck with it. They haven't adjusted to anything we've learned, to any new data, to any science. Like, for example, natural immunity still means nothing to most of these people. We're a year and a half into this thing. There's going to be natural immunity at some point, and a lot of people have it. A lot of people have caught the disease already, but that's a thing that they just won't hear. So it's just interesting to see how those two groups have become the antithesis of what it is they say they stand for. It's also like a third group you could throw in there that really is kind of the anti-religious group would be like the pro-science group. They're so upset that the Republicans would not consult science and they wouldn't listen to science, and they've become like the most unscientific group. Like when you're, I mean, there are some like science deniers on the right, but it's funny, like when I was talking to my uncle with some of the accusations he was throwing at me, I'm thinking, dude, you're a science denier. Like you're telling me stuff that's not true about me. And when I throw facts back at you, you got nothing. So it's just it's an interesting transformation to watch.
Well, and even that term, science denier, I mean, that's got like religious tenor to it, It's just like nobody's denying anything. I'm just saying that I don't trust, I trust what my eyes see, not what, what you're telling me. I had one of these lefties got on my Twitter the other day and wanted to comment towards me. And I had made a disparaging remark about segregation. Go figure. I must be a white supremacist because I don't like segregation. But I made a disparaging remark about segregation, and she goes, she said something along the lines like segregation is necessary for the unvaxxed, you halfwit. And I'm like, hey, look, it's the tolerant left, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then there was somebody, it was some blue check had said something bad about ivermectin, and she had said something along the lines of, if it wasn't for you conspiracy theorists pushing this ivermectin on everybody, we'd have herd immunity by now. And I'd be like, I just responded, I said, herd animals take ivermectin.
Wait, herd immunity, isn't that like natural immunity, and
Yeah.
isn't that involved in herd immunity, like whatever. I mean, there's some people who literally think if everybody got vaccinated that COVID would just go away. And it's like, no, that's just not. I mean, even the CDC, I think, is saying that everybody is going to get COVID, everybody in the world. There's nothing you can do about it unless you lock yourself away and hide forever, which you can't do. So I don't know, like, what are we, what's the game here? Like, how many booster shots are you going to get? How many more lockdowns? How much more social distancing until we're just like, well, I don't know. Everybody's going to get this. Like, I mean, people just need to start thinking that way, because no one is thinking that way. They're all thinking about how we can eliminate it and how we can evade it. And that's just not what we're going to do. So we've got to start being real about it. And, whenever there's been a pandemic before, they don't hide everybody. Like, they hide the vulnerable, and the normal people still go to work. Like, this is a new thing that everybody tries to hide forever. Like, I don't think that's ever really been done before. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think it has. Like, I think even protocols before this happened, protocols for Western nations were like, if there is a pandemic, we'll protect the vulnerable, and the able-bodied will keep things going, and we'll work our way through it. But that got thrown out the window this last time, and I don't know why they expected it to work, but here we are. So,
Well, one of the things that I've been saying, and Pete's been saying, and a lot of people have been saying, you probably said it too, is no matter like what you think about COVID, we can look at the response and we can be like, okay, they're testing the waters to see how much authoritarianism they can throw at us at one time. Like, that's what they're doing. Like, they're trying to figure out what they can get away with. And then today, NPR releases a damn news story that New Delhi is locking down the city. They're going into full lockdown for climate change.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah. So this, no matter what you think about the virus, this has obviously been an exercise in tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Worldwide, globally. And so we're in the middle of this global, worldwide tyranny that is raining down on us. And I'm not going to just go along to get along. I'm going to resist, because that's what free people do.
Yeah. I mean, it also doesn't matter how bad the virus is. Like, when I appreciate what Rand Paul has been standing up and saying to Fauci, but at the same time, if you look at his arguments,
They're mealy
they're
mouthed.
they're all saying like what you did was unjustified because the disease isn't as bad as you said it was, and because these lockdowns are ineffective at stopping the spread. And it's like, yeah, man, that's not really the point. Like, the point shouldn't be, oh, this disease wasn't bad enough to, give
Justify.
into fascism.
Right.
Like, I mean, if you admit that a disease can ever be bad enough to give into fascism, I think you've lost the plot. Like,
Right.
the whole point is, no, fascism's bad and we're going to oppose it.
Yeah.
And you actually don't have a right to tell us, whether or not we can go to work or come out of our houses, or, where we can eat and all this shit. Like, you can advise us, you can tell us the info, but at the end of the day, it's up to us individually what we're going to do. And if you want to disassociate with people, if you want to lock yourself in your house, or if you want to run a business where you're like, hey, everyone who's here, like, we're going to be really careful, and we're going to vaccinate and wear like whatever. Like, if you want to do that on your own association, fine. But if you're like saying we need, state enforced societal reforms to protect us from germs, I don't want, you're off your rocker. I don't want anything to do with you. And I don't want you anywhere near power. And you're right. Like, this, whatever you think of the disease, it doesn't matter. If you think it's the worst thing in the world or just a severe flu or whatever, the government response has not been about humanitarian concern. It has been about grabbing more power. And it's just like the Patriot Act was not really about protecting us from terrorists. It was about more control, more surveillance, more awareness of what we're doing all the time. That's always what the government does. Like, I don't know why anyone would think any differently. The war on terrorism was not about furthering, Western democracy culture around the world. I mean, name anything they've done. None of it has been in the name of humanitarian interests. It's all been for more power. And, like you said, the next thing is going to be climate change. They're going to say this is the only way to save us from destroying the planet. And like, when does it stop? When do you finally say, no, fuck you? You don't care about us. You've only cared about increasing your own power and wealth and fucking us over. And we got to stand up. So I agree with you. Like, it really doesn't matter how bad the disease is. It's about how bad the power grab is. That's what people need to start focusing on.
Right. And they're going to continue, they're going to find new and inventive ways and creative ways to continue to demonize people that refuse the vaccine. I mean, it's just obvious. They're just going to keep doing that, right? And just like they, the climate deniers, you have the science deniers, and now you have the anti-vaxxers, and so you have this whole array of, and this I want to see what you think about this. So it's kind of a little pushback, but I think it's just, mincing words really is what we're doing here. I think saying that the terror war was in past existence is the wrong way to look at it. I think the terror war is in full blown effect.
Sure.
And now the unvaccinated are bioterrorists, and those that, question the effects of climate change or how climate change comes to exist, or says, hey, you know what? Maybe bombing countries, 365 days a year isn't the best thing for the climate. Maybe let's stop that, or stop flying on private jets, and then we'll talk about what else humanity can do for the climate. But let's stop doing that first. And that turns you into some sort of like climate terrorist, or whatever. So I think the war on terror is in full blown effect. It's just it's reaching its natural conclusion. Like, it was always aimed at targeting and victimizing the American people by proxy, and now it is targeting and victimizing the American people by force.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't even ended overseas. That's the funny thing. Like,
right,
I mean,
true.
It's still, that's even the regular war on terror is still going. But yeah, you're right. Like, so this is where I disagree with a lot of post-libertarian or Praxians, whatever they want to call themselves, is they say that, this is all the fault of the left. I think that right-wingers are the first ones who really opened the door to this. And whether or not you want to call the neoconservatives right-wingers, the right-wingers in America, not the people in office, but like, my family and my extended family on my mom's side and all the people I grew up with, kind of like homegrown evangelical Christian right wingers, they opened the door to this in the early 2000s with George W. Bush and all his policies, and they were 100% behind it. And it's because they were scared of, rightfully so. Like, I understand 9/11 was a horrifying experience to witness, but they gave in to fear and decided that giving up their liberty to fight a little fear was worth it. And then what happens over the next 20 years, that power that they gave to the government ends up being used against you by your enemies. So I don't think that trying to gain power to use against your enemies is actually a smart strategy. I think that always backfires. Like, I buy the, I might be a principled lolbert or whatever, but I think that the state having the power in the first place is the problem, and that the pendulum will just swing. And like, if you grant that power for temporary vengeance, watch out, down the road. It's always going to come back and get you.
I don't think you're looking far enough back. And I think that's what their point is. I think this is where a big amount of the disagreement is occurring, is because you're talking about two different things, at least from what I can gather. And I talk to those guys because I'm friends with a lot of those guys, and I talk to, like you and
I am
a lot
too.
of other people.
I'm friends with a lot of them.
Yeah,
I get along with them. So yeah.
So I try to like figure out like where is this, like where are we passing here, because we're passing somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about 2000. You're talking about Bush and the neocons and the people, the voters, the right wing of the American people, right?
Right.
But we're talking also about $1 trillion a year propaganda machine that's throwing propaganda down these people's throats. I don't know of another era where so many people were so aware and willing to fight propaganda, right? Than we have since like social media. And this is why they're shutting a lot of people up, because a lot of people are starting to catch on and say, oh, this is a bunch of bullshit, right? You didn't have this in the 80s. You didn't have this in the 90s. You didn't have this in the early 2000s, where people were keeping track of the propaganda and, pointing out, in one day the headline says this, and just 2 days later it completely contradicts itself. Same fucking newspaper, same goddamn writer, like that type of deal. Like, we weren't doing that in 2000. We're doing that now, right? And so it's taken the people a long time to catch up with the battle that is being waged on them. And in that way, I think that some slack must be given to the right wingers, because nobody had the tools 20 years ago, not on a mass scale. Maybe there were a few people, like a Noam Chomsky, understood what was going on. Obviously, people that had read Edward Bernays, but a lot of the people that were reading these books were adhering to these books. They were the faithful for Rules for Radicals, propaganda, or Chomskyites in some way, shape, or form. It is, we've just gotten to a period in history to where the force fighting back against these people are engaging in the same literature and learning from their literature, their tactics, so that we can fight back. So I think I would say if you're gonna say it's done through history and it's been bled down, which I don't disagree with you. I think you're right there, but I think you're not going far enough back. I think you have to go further back. I think you have to go back to Woodrow Wilson or Lincoln to see where these shifts like started to occur, and then how they promoted from there. You see what I'm saying? because I don't think it was an overnight thing. You can even go back
Oh yeah.
to Thomas Jefferson, right? In the Louisiana Purchase and expanding the United States. You know, like what did he call it? The going west. It was the I don't know.
Manifest Destiny.
Manifest Destiny. Thank you. Well, Manifest Destiny could only go as far as the oceans. So we had to take the Manifest Destiny overseas into other countries and expand American hegemony there. If you want to read a great book on that, Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written, I think he wrote it in the 70s. I have it somewhere up here. Somewhere. Anyway, it was a book Scott Horton told me about. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read it. You know, Scott tells you to read something, you read it. It's like, okay. So, and yeah, I read it and I was like, oh, wow. And he gets into, I mean, he's covering every aspect of the globe. And this was what he was teaching in colleges in the 70s. This was like he blueprinted the American foreign policy. Well, if you understand like the blueprint and you're looking at American hegemony, then you realize like all he's doing is expanding on Manifest Destiny. He's just doing it in another way. Like he had taken from the experiences of CIA coups overseas, like in Iran and this, that, and the other. He had pulled from all these different information centers and he had created this blueprint. And so he's talking about he talks about every region of the world and what the benefits are, what the struggles will be, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's talking about natural gas in Russia and the Balkans and all and it's like, oh wow, we're still dealing with that shit, right? We're still dealing with that shit because he was laying it out for, you know, Kissinger and these guys because he was giving them advice. He was an advisor, you know, to the White House for many years as well. And so, you know, that's how that dumbass chick Mika got her fucking job when they're like not a goddamn lick of goddamn intelligence in that blonde head. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, no. So like that's his daughter, Mika Brzezinski. That's his daughter. Like, and he had all this. So like what I think's happening is they're saying no. If you look, this is the trajectory, and this is how the trajectory works. And in order to shift the trajectory, we have to intercede on the trajectory. So that means we have to engage in the fight as it's happening. Whereas libertarians are not engaging in this fight. They're talking about this fight, but they're talking about this fight way over here, outside of the spectrum of power. And they're saying, no, we have to move into this place where this fight is actually occurring. Right? And so I think that's what they're trying to do. I think that's what I gather. That's kind of, and it's like I was talking to Josh on Break the Cycle the other day. And I was telling him, I was like, look, dude, I was like, I think libertarians will be the first ones to promote decentralization. But when we're talking tactics, when we're talking Libertarian Party or tactics, there's no such thing as decentralization. But Tho Bishop doing what Tho Bishop does in Florida is fucking fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Buck Johnson running for city council up in Lockhart is fucking phenomenal for all I'm concerned. And the needs and the desires of New York City or New York State aren't the same as North Dakota. So we have to decentralize the way that we're attacking these different regions. Sometimes the Republican Party may be the best party. Like in Texas, honestly, I think the Republican Party would be the best party. Like if you've ever seen like the rhetoric that comes out of the Libertarian Party of Texas, these people, I mean, it's like a bunch of fucking Archie Flowers around here. I don't want to go. Why am I going to pick my ass up, drive 6 hours to a fucking Libertarian Party convention in Texas and just be like, this is fucking bullshit. Like nobody thinks the
Yeah.
way I think. There's no like I would probably have better luck going to a Texas nationalist movement meeting and working with the Brexit crowd. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think local like it really depends on your region and where you're working at and what you're working for, that how you should be working. But I think a lot of what's happening here are people are talking about several different things and conflating them and arguing with each other, thinking that they're talking about the same thing and they're not. Which is why I wanted you to have that conversation with you and Adam Patrick, because I was like, I don't think you guys disagree so much. You know, like I
Yeah.
think this is all unnecessary.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, there are a lot of, there's a lot of different people who are saying different things. But I don't think, any libertarian that I know thinks that Tho Bishop is bad, or that that Buck Johnson, what he's doing is bad. Like, I
Oh,
totally
right. I
support
didn't
what
mean
both
to
of those guys are
insinuate.
doing.
I didn't mean to insinuate anybody thought it was bad. That's not what I was trying to insinuate. I was just making a
Yeah, but
point. I was making a point about the strategy being different for them.
sure. No, no, I actually support that. I think that, in some places the Republican, I mean, in Hawaii, the fucking Democrat Party might make the most sense to be, advancing liberty. I mean, if you're a
Right.
Republican there, you can't win. So, maybe you run as a Democrat and do what you can. So,
Right.
I think, on that page is what I'm talking about is a general sentiment that I see pop up. And, it tends to be people in that crowd who jump on it to use political power to crush your enemies. That's what I don't agree with. I'm not talking about using the Republican Party. I'm not talking about running for mayor. I'm talking about like exerting political power over people that you don't like. I don't think that ever has worked out. Like, I think historically that has just been, that's just given people nothing but backlash. And I'll agree with you, it didn't start 20 years ago. It went back to, especially to like Wilson. That was when it started getting really bad. But there was an exponential jump at the beginning of this century in centralized power. You'd agree with that, right? From like the 90s to the 2000s, there was an exponential jump in centralized power from the federal government that they were not exhibiting before.
Yeah,
And
I don't think they could have done it without the previous 50 years. I think they had to I think they
oh,
needed
sure, I wouldn't.
I think the propaganda that they laid forth was the foundation for that, right? And that's why I'm
Yeah,
saying you have to, and so that's why I kind of excuse the citizens, is because like you were like just fed like I because like I mean like if you talk to your parents about this stuff, like I talked to my mom about it a lot, and she's like, I just really didn't know. I just thought I was supposed to believe them,
yeah,
right? You know, and so it's just one of those things. It's like that propaganda that it's so drilled. I mean, they're so brainwashed, and it took a long time for our for the lessons to be learned, for the literature to be written that you and I read and are engaged in. And you know, hindsight's 2020 and all, and it's easy to look back, but it's one of those situations where I kind of lean to don't hold the people of the past to the same degree of morality that you have today. It's kind of that kind of idea, because they didn't have the same information that we have today. They didn't have the same
sure.
availability, you know, to gather information the way we have today. So I kind of give them a pass because they didn't know and they didn't have any way of knowing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I give you that to an extent, but what I saw that really ticked me off and made me realize that they have not matured was right after Trump airstriked Soleimani. Um, all of my Republican friends and family members were acting like it was 2003 all over again. Like they were ready to go turn Iran into a plate of glass. It was
Mm.
like fuck these people, USA, USA, we're gonna go fucking wipe them out.
I saw that too. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And
Yeah.
I was just like, so like that makes me think they haven't learned anything. So I'm not more sympathetic toward like the left half of America than the right half. I just think that there really is not any critical thought taking place on either side. And I don't really, I just had Andrew from Popular Liberty on my show, and we were talking about this. I don't think that there are ideological differences between them either. Your average Democrat and your average Republican, I think that they just kind of get swept up in whatever social movement is taking place at any given time. Like, I don't think that your average Republican is a rugged individualist who's really thought about property rights and small government. And I don't think your average Democrat is a collectivist socialist who, has just really thought about Marxist ideology or something. Like, I don't think they're that different. Like, I think you have two people who've probably never really actually thought through their entire political philosophy, and they're very susceptible to social issues and social upheaval taking place in the country. And I think that I would agree with you that like nowadays there's less of an excuse. It's like, come on, you can't think this. You have the research tools at your fingertips. There's tons of people talking about this who weren't back 20 years ago. I think you're right in that regard. So I guess in that way, like the left half of the country right now, they deserve a little bit more judgment than the right wingers did 20 years ago. But I think they're largely the same. I also think, the right overplayed its hand 20 years ago, and that's why you've had all this ridiculous backlash. Like, I mean, they fucking hated gays in the early 2000s. It was ridiculous. Like the right half of America, the campaign against gays, and then that I think has been a lot of what this degenerate backlash has been about. And now I think the degenerate backlash is getting so ridiculous. Like, they're saying there's no differences between men and women, that your transgender son should be allowed to go into the women's bathroom, and like all this ridiculous retarded bullshit. And I think that is going to swing back the opposite way. Like, I foresee right-wing culture in our near future, because people are just going to be so fucking sick of this stupidity, and then they're probably going to overplay their hand again, and it's going to swing back again. So that's what I mean. It's just like this attempt to, unleash vengeance on the people who have wronged you. I just don't see it ever working out. Like, I think the problem is that we have control over each other. So I support like what Buck is doing and what Tho Bishop is doing. And, I would support more people to do local politics that are saying like, hey, let's do our own thing here. Let's stop caring about what's going on in Washington, D.C. Let's care more about local politics and taking care of our own communities, and trying to defuse like this massive, ridiculous propaganda machine that just is really designed to make us hate each other and
Right.
make us want control over each other, and I think that's the whole problem right there. But that's why you have my uncle angry at me about stuff that doesn't make any sense, because there has been this massive media propaganda machine that, like you said, goes back before 20 years ago, that has just for some reason given people the desire to rule over someone who doesn't even live in their same neighborhood with them.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. I'm doing already recorded the episode. It'll come out just before this episode comes out, and so like a week and a half. But I just recorded with Michael Bolden, and so it was something we were talking about, was the inability for the federal government to enforce regulations without the help of local communities. And this is why I think localism is so important, is if you take over the local communities, then you can make it illegal to participate with the federal government, right? On a local level. And they don't have the enforcement arms on the federal level to do it without the local level, right? So so I think it is much more important to look at the local levels, figure out what will work best for these local levels, and enter the strategy at that point, and not be caught up in the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, the Libertarian Party. Who cares at that point?
Right.
Like, who cares? Because what you're going to do when you get into office is you're going to bring in your principles and your ideas into office. As far as using power against your opponents,
Well, also when I say like using power, a lot of people will say that I mean like using state power to nullify the federal government. That's not what I'm talking about. Like,
no,
I think
no, no, no,
that's
no, no, no.
great.
I think it's pretty
I
obvious
mean,
what you're talking about. Yeah, you're talking about
right,
using state violence.
against people you don't like or people who have
You
tried to use it
disagree
against
with,
you. Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think that is. I think there's something natural to that idea, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I laugh at those jokes and I find them kind of funny myself, but I do get where your concern is, because like there is always a slippery slope whenever it comes to utilizing violence and using violence. I think the argument that is being laid out whenever it comes to utilizing state violence or utilizing violence against your political opponents is that it is a self-defense like mechanism, right? That these people wish to harm you. They wish you dead. They don't want you here. It's like I always say, they can't stand you, but they can't survive without you. That they would, if it were up to them, that you would be no longer in existence.
mm-hmm.
And they utilize political power in such a way that it almost makes your existence null and void. That they try to minimize you to just your productivity, and you're nothing else. You don't own anything. It's the year's 2030. You own nothing and you will be happy. Like that type of deal. So it's this idea that what they are talking about is utilizing the state and using state force for self-defense purposes against those that feel that way, right? I don't think it's like, oh, we disagree, so you're dead. Like, I don't take it as that. I don't think you do either, but I think some people do.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's more of a, this is a self-defense mechanism. We are grabbing a weapon and utilizing it and wielding it in self-defense. I think that's what they're trying to get at. That's how it feels to me. I understand how it can be taken out of proportion or taken to such an extent that it seems despicable, but I don't think I think it's kind of like the wood chipper meme. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of what they're getting at. It's utilizing, it's grabbing a weapon and utilizing it for self-defense. Now,
yeah, and I'm just saying,
any of them are welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. They might just be like, no, we just want to throw commies out of helicopters. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think the only self-defense that makes any sense is nullification, because I just think like trying to grab power and use it against your enemies just always ends up in your enemy's hands eventually. So like, I think, trying to have your state government sponsor defend the guard legislation or nullify Biden's vaccine mandates or nullify gun laws, whatever. I think that's the ultimate self-defense move, because when you do that, you could just, like you said, there's no local enforcement. So what is the federal government going to do? They can't do anything. I think that's I don't know where that got lost, that nullification, disempowers the people you hate. Like, yeah, I hate those fucking cucked liberals in New York City who want me wearing a mask out here in Utah too. But if we nullify the federal government's power, who fucking cares? They're just people with bad opinions in New York City. I don't
Yeah,
have to give a shit about them anymore. You
yeah,
know?
I don't think it got lost. I think it's just like, uh, I think, I think that's one of those subjects that a lot of people think everybody understands. Like, it's just like Buck
Mm-hmm.
Johnson is going to go after power in order to nullify state and city laws, like that are
Oh,
oppressive.
no, no, no. Well,
Yeah.
like people are misconstruing. Like, I think, to me, running for office is not seizing political power against people. That's like, I mean, what Ron Paul did, I don't consider that abusing political power. Like, he just ran for office to try to dismantle the power structure. So, like, Buck running for mayor and protecting the people of his district, I don't look at that as malicious power grabs. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between
Yeah, but
um
see, here's what I'm saying. He is attempting to grab the power of the state and use it against his opponents, right? So what he wants to do is he wants to grab the power of city council or mayorship or whatever he's running for, or throw bishop or whoever else. They
yeah,
want to grab that power and use it against their opponents. And what I mean by use it against their opponents is basically ostracize their opponents, make it their opponents so uncomfortable that they have to leave. You're getting rid of those laws. You're getting rid of, like, you're not adhering to the tyranny that so many people want to see, right? So that, like, you have to, what they're saying there, and I think I get where this is crossing paths here now. What they are saying there is the way that the left looks at politics and government, right? Is
yep,
they run for political office in order to get power, to take away your rights, right? What they're
right,
saying is we're going to run for political power and take office to take away their power. Like, we
right.
don't want them to have a say. They don't deserve to have a say. They keep taking away your rights. So therefore their say is not, it has nothing to do with our run. And so they are taking actions that they think are more effective in gaining power, right? And so they can utilize that power in order to nullify or to get rid of that tyranny that is being pushed down everybody's throats. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So they're
No, and
utilizing
I
they're
don't disagree with any of that. Like, I think
right,
all that's
right.
great.
But what I think is happening is the utilization of political power. I think that term is fucking people up.
Sure. I mean, so what I see is just a lot of sentiments on Twitter to be like, we are going to and this isn't from Buck. Like, I haven't
Oh
seen
yeah,
any of this
yeah, yeah,
from
yeah,
Buck. I don't like, and I don't even remember like what names exactly. And there's also like, and I'm good friends with Pete, and I've had Andrew on my show a bunch, and I'd like to have Buck on sometime. We talk with Adam, so this isn't like aimed at any individual specifically. It's just like from that area of the liberty movement, even from like a lot of accounts that I don't even know, there's this sentiment to pass laws like basically kicking trans people out of their communities and like making gay marriage illegal again. I actually got into an argument about that with that was with Toe Bishop, but I'm actually going to have him on my show. We're going to talk about it more. But stuff that's like explicitly passing legislation to make people's lives miserable. It's not what you're talking about, what Buck wants to do, which is remove tyrannical laws. Like, that's what I'm all about. That's what I think we should do. I think that's the libertarian answer. Nullification, remove state abuse. It's just when you like want to take that power that the left has been using against you and then use it against them, not take it away from them. I'm talking about like using it against them. That's where I think you know, if you want to do that, you've lost the plot. And that's what I think the right did 20 years ago. They used political power against innocent people, or even people they didn't like or whatever, and that backfired. And now the left is doing it to the right. They're using political power against innocent people. And then I think it's gonna fucking swing back the other way, and the right is gonna start doing it again. And it's just like, holy shit, guys, like, when are we gonna stop doing this? You know? So,
Yeah, no, I feel
like,
what you're saying.
that's what
And
I'm saying.
I could just be misunderstanding what they're saying, but the way I read it in is because the way the left looks at it, right, is that, you know, words are violence to the left. So it's
Yeah,
like,
right.
if they take political power and they get rid of these social justice woke, like, you look at how the left has reacted to Terry McAuliffe losing in Virginia. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And that's kind
yeah,
of the way I read what they're trying to do. That's like, what, like, don't allow these people that want to shove this shit down your kid's throat, like, to take power. Like, and that if you take that power and you don't allow them to have the power, then to them it is violence. It's an assault on their rights, you know? And it's like, what, your right
yeah,
to force your shit down my throat? No, like, just live your life. Leave me the fuck alone. Like, and so maybe I'm misreading what they're saying, but that's how I always kind of read it, was like, the left looks at power as their destiny, as it rightfully, their entitlement, it rightfully belongs to them. And that if you take it and you do not pass, or you repeal or nullify these leftist policies, then it is being utilized against them, right? And so
yeah.
that was kind of the way I looked at it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just like giving too much of the benefit of the doubt to people, because it was like, I always looked at anything that included violence kind of like the wood chipper meme. I always like just kind of chuckled at it. It was like, ha, that's funny, you know, and just went on about my business, because I didn't, like, with Pete. I know Pete pretty well. I've known Pete for probably 4 years now, and I don't I don't take him seriously when he says something that will get him kicked off of Twitter. Um, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that tweet. He had said something about shooting commies in the balls or something like that. Uh,
So much of the focus of my podcast is to point out abuses of power and how bad things have gotten, and the direction in which we're heading as a society. And it can be a real black pill. I've partnered up with Richard Grove to offer my listeners an opportunity to sign up to his Autonomy Course. The Autonomy Course is designed for people looking for solutions, people that want to shape their own future, people that are not willing to be at the behest of large corporations or the United States government or the banking system. The Autonomy Course is designed for those of you who wish to have complete control of the reins of your life, who are looking to be successful, that to thrive and not just survive, to provide for your family by utilizing your existing skills and learning how to market and sell those skills in order to be your own boss, or learn new skills in order to leverage that into a new career opportunity. So if there's a job out there you've been trying to get, or you've been wishing you could get, but you just don't have the skills for it, the Autonomy Course is the place for you to start, to learn how to land that position, to learn how to market yourself better, to gain confidence, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded people that will encourage you and help you along the way. So use my affiliate links and go check out the Autonomy Course. It could be right for you.
Well, hey, I mean, that was something that I would not consider political violence. He was saying, I think he said we should shoot commies in the street who are burning property, and I assumed that was our Kyle Rittenhouse.
yes.
You know, I don't think that kid did anything wrong, and I think if you're defending your property against violent mobsters. Like, yeah, I don't think that's, I mean, I think there's been this, there's been this misunderstanding of the non-aggression principle and this misunderstanding of libertarians. Like, there are some like autistic weirdo libertarians who think running for office is violence. I mean, those people do exist, but it's not most of them. And then it's also not most of them who think nullification is abuse of political power. Like, everything you described that Buck Johnson is doing, I don't know any libertarian personally who would have an issue with anything like that. And I don't know too many libertarians who have an issue with Kyle Rittenhouse. There's probably some, but everybody that I'm friends with, they're like, yeah, no, that kid did nothing wrong. So I think I don't know. You're right. There is like, I think it's starting to go away. Like, that was a great video with Dave Smith and Pete and Andrew, and I've had Andrew on twice, and then you, me, and Adam talking. Like, I think the miscommunications are starting to go away, but I still think that, there is like a straw manning going on of libertarians, that they're all just limp-wristed people who don't think we should try to stop the left at all, and we should just let them run us over. Like, I don't really know any libertarian who actually thinks that, like, I think self-defensive politics are something that pretty much every libertarian that I respect would actually believe in. I think, but like you, I might be wrong. Who knows? I mean, maybe you and I are just a couple idiots who are just like, oh yeah, this is what these guys think. And when they listen to this episode, they're gonna be like, what the fuck were you guys talking about? We don't think any of that
shit. Yeah, we're just a couple of fucking truck drivers shooting this shit. Well, shit, man, we've been going about an hour and a half. You wanna call it an evening?
Yeah, no, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. I always love talking with you.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. Let's plug away, dude.
Yeah, so I am back on Twitter now. I have a new account. It's at Naturalist Cap. You can follow me there. I don't know how long that'll last, but I'm back. But I'm trying to diversify now. Follow me on, if you just look up Reed Coverdale or Naturalist Capitalist, you'll find me. On YouTube, I'm Naturalist Capitalist. I'm also Naturalist Capitalist on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm Reed Coverdale. And then on Odyssey, I'm Naturalist Capitalist. But just follow me all those places. I'm probably going to be diversifying more just for when the inevitable banning from the mainstream platforms comes. And I ought to start a Substack or something eventually too, but haven't gotten that far. I'm still just, truck driving's my bread and butter, and I just do this on the side. So I'm still pretty unprofessional.
All right, man. Well, I'll make sure I put your new Twitter and your YouTube and in the comments and all that, or show notes and all that good jazz. So, all right, this was fun, dude. It's always a blast to talk to you. I always enjoy it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, brother. Well, you get a good night's sleep. My wife's been waiting out for me.
All right, man.
All right, brother.
If you're gonna play this game of pick and choose, well, it's a game that was made for you to lose. It doesn't really matter how many times, it's the same old worn-out stories, same old lines. Pointing dirty fingers in hypocrisy, bragging on their feats of mediocrity again. Never really making any kind of change, but they keep on getting re-elected, and I find that strange. That's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the times that I've taken our freedoms. What's it gonna take for you to see that we're living in a rigged democracy? People stand in line for the things that they've been choosing, paying no attention to the rights they keep on losing. But they say fuck them, don't feed them cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. Don't feed them cause we don't even need them. We'll never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. Fuck them, don't feed them cause we don't even need them. We'll never celebrate the tyrants